All right. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. I'm ready. Okay. When I sit down in front of a beer or two beers, I'll often swirl it and sniff it and swirl it and sniff it and swirl it and sniff it and then probably sip it. And that's because I'm a beer nerd. I like my blondes in tall, slender glasses. And I like my Belgian Grand Crus in kingly goblets. And I love beer so much, I make it at home. And I love making it so much at home that I literally get paid to talk about it all day. I'm also a poetry nerd with a pretty serious poet face. And I love poetry so much that I got a degree in it at the University of Alabama. And the U of A is in the South. It is in the deep South, in Tuscaloosa, Roll Tide. And that's where I really cut my teeth as a writer and as a homebrewer. And my first night in Tuscaloosa, I went out with some classmates to a bar, and the most striking thing was the one lonely Miller Lite tap in the bar, and the bottle list, more Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light, Smirnoff Ice Light. And what I didn't realize at the time was that Alabama had Prohibition-era beer laws still on the books. No beer over 5.3% alcohol. No beer in 22-ounce bomber bottles. No beer on Sundays. And absolutely no homebrewing. So my first homebrew batch in Alabama was a Fat Tire clone, and it was awesome. It probably tasted awful. But we had a big party, and some faculty even came, and we drank every drop. And like I said, awesome. So this connection between writing and homebrewing may actually seem like a pretty easy one. There's some pretty famous authors that are really famous drunks, too. But the connection that I started to find was that not only are these creative acts, they're giving acts as well. To go back to the gift, I love that. When I make a poem, it's not to stay in a notebook or on a hard drive. It's to go out into the world. It's me saying, here, I made this. And it's the same thing with homebrewing. Here, I brewed this. I love giving my beer away as much as I love making it. And as I kept making more beer and more poems, the more I began to see the world new. And I make sense of the world through poetry. I don't sing, I don't paint, I don't dance, I write. And that Miller Lite, I have a new appreciation for now after years of homebrewing. To make something that consistent with so many different variables is actually really impressive. The other thing is you don't read a poem just to get to the next one. You don't chug a poem. And it's the same thing with drinking. That's what's with all the swirling and sniffing. It really cultivates a type of mindfulness. And when I sit down to drink, I want to taste the barley. I want to smell every layer of hops. I want to feel the carbonation on my tongue. I want to get lost in every moment of every sip, like when I get lost in an image or a metaphor in a poem. But I'm also doing some R&D. I'm trying to probe the artifice there. I'm trying to reverse engineer what's in front of me so I can make a better beer next time, so I can make a better poem next time. So how else have I brought these two things together in my life? Well, when most people think of a beer and when they think of a poet and a poetry reading, they usually think of something like this. So what I decided to do was start a reading series, and it's called Poetry and Pints. And I handpick writers, and they give a reading, and I brew a batch of beer, and I give it away for free. And not only is this a great marriage of my two passions, my two creative passions, but it's also a really, really good time. And it challenges people's assumptions about what poetry is and what a beer is. I'll use pineapple or whiskey-infused oak in the brews. And there they are, drinking a beer they never otherwise would have been drinking, or at a poetry reading they otherwise would have never, ever been at. So the next time you see me swirling and sniffing and swirling, probably in 30 seconds, realize that I'm trying to be in that moment and that my next beer and often my next poem depends upon it. So I thought it was appropriate now to finish with the last few lines of poetry, and it's really an invitation, I feel, to all the makers here and from all the makers here tonight. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? Thank you.